want to tell you something strange. I've never heard a retiree say, I wish I'd spent more time at the office. I never heard one say, I wish I had delayed that family vacation. And I've never heard one say, I wish I'd waited longer to spend time with my grandchildren. But I have heard the opposite hundreds of times after reading retirement surveys, listening to retirees, and reading hundreds of comments on this channel. I've noticed something really interesting. 5 years, give or take, into retirement, very few people are talking about their withdrawal rate. Very few are talking about the S&P 500. Very few are talking about how much they retired with. Instead, they're talking about regrets, the things they wish they had done, the things they wish they had started earlier, the opportunities they thought would still be there. And what's fascinating is that the regrets are surprisingly consistent. Different incomes, different careers, different states, different lifestyles. And yet many retirees arrive at the exact same conclusions. Today I want to walk through 6 of the most common regrets retirees report after about 5 years of retirement. Look, these aren't just my opinions. They're patterns that show up again and again in surveys, research, and the comments under videos just like this one. Here's what's strange. By the time we get to the end, you're going to see that these 6 aren't really 6 separate regrets. They're the same regret, wearing 6 different outfits. And if you're not retired yet, you know what I hope? I hope this may save you from learning them the hard way. Let's start with one that surprises most people. Some retirees regret retiring too early. National surveys put the number at about 1 in 5. People who left work early and later said they wish they hadn't. Not because they ran out of money, but because they retired away from something instead of toward something. They were tired, burned out, frustrated. They were ready to escape, so they left. And for the first 6 months, it felt fantastic. No alarm clock, no meetings, no commute, no boss. But then something unexpected happened. Tuesday started feeling exactly like Wednesday. And Wednesday felt exactly like Thursday. The structure disappeared. The challenge disappeared. The sense of contribution disappeared. Retirement solved the problem they had, but it didn't replace what work had been providing. Many retirees discovered they didn't actually hate working. They hated that particular job, and those are very different things. One retiree said it best, I didn't miss my job. I missed having somewhere to be. The happiest retirees often retire into something: volunteering, teaching, mentoring, part-time work, community involvement, maybe a hobby that becomes really meaningful. The lesson is don't retire. The lesson is don't retire without knowing what comes next. Now, let's look at the opposite regret, retiring too late. One major retirement survey found nearly half of retirees wished they'd retire earlier than they did, on average, about 4 years sooner. This one shows up just as often as the last one. There are people who spent years saying, just one more year, one more bonus, one more market cycle, just a little more security. That one's mine. And then something changes. A health issue, a spouse's health issue, a parent needing care, a friend passing away, an opportunity disappearing, and suddenly they realize something: money compounds, time does not. The extra money, it was real, but so was the opportunity cost. One retiree put it this way: I protected my money for a future that eventually arrived. The problem was I wasn't the same person when I got there. Man, that's a really powerful sentence. How about a quote from another retiree? I thought I was saving money for my grandchildren. What they really wanted was more time with me. The goal isn't maximizing, squeezing every single dollar. The goal is maximizing your life. There's a point where more security produces less freedom. The challenge is figuring out where is that point for you. This may be the most underestimated risk of all. Loneliness. Not being alone, but being disconnected. Your work created community, whether we realize it or not. You see people every day at work. You solve problems together, you share stories, you celebrate milestones, and you complain about the same things, and then retirement arrives. And much of that disappears overnight. Nationally, surveys find that about 43% of Americans over 60 report feeling lonely, and losing a daily workplace is one of the most common triggers. This isn't just an emotional issue. Prolonged loneliness has been linked to higher risk of dementia, heart disease, and stroke. It affects the body, not just the mood. Research consistently shows that strong relationships are one of the strongest predictors of health and happiness later in life. Yet many retirees spend decades preparing financially and almost no time preparing socially. One of the most common comments that I hear is, I didn't realize how much of my social life came from work. The retirees who thrive tend to build community intentionally. Faith groups, volunteer organizations, fitness groups, neighborhood connections, community service, friendships that require effort. Relationships don't maintain themselves. They need maintenance, just like retirement accounts do. Now, this next one is hard because many people assume health is something they'll deal with after retirement. And then guess what? Retirement arrives and they discover health. It's not a switch. It's a long-term investment. The strength you have at 70 is often built back in your 60s. The mobility you have at 80 is often built back in your 70s. One retiree put it this way: I spent 30 years saving for a retirement that my knees can't keep up with. One of the biggest retirement myths is that money is the most important asset. Guess what? It's not. Health is. Because health determines whether you can actually enjoy everything else: travel, family, hobbies, freedom, independence. None of those things work very well without your health. The retirees who seem happiest are often not the wealthiest. They're the ones who can still do the things they enjoy: walk, travel, play with the grandchildren, volunteer, just participate. Retirement isn't about extending lifespan. It's about extending your health span. Let me ask you a question. If retirement started tomorrow, who would you spend your time with? What would your Tuesday actually look like? What would give you a sense of purpose once the job that used to provide it is gone? Look, if you don't have a clear answer, you're not alone. Most people plan their finances more carefully than they plan their retirement life. They'll spend years optimizing a withdrawal rate, and not once, never, write down what an ordinary Tuesday is supposed to feel like. Do me a favor, would you just take a second? Think about it. Actually think about it, because we're going to come back to this in just a minute. A surprising number of retirees tell the same story. We thought we'd do it later. The trip, the family reunion, the RV adventure, the hiking trip, the overseas vacation, the dream they carried for 20 years. Later, it feels responsible. Later feels safe. Later feels prudent, until later arrives. Researchers at Cornell have spent more than a decade studying this exact pattern. And the finding holds up again and again. Experiences create more lasting satisfaction than material purchases, regardless of your income level. Yet Many people postpone the experiences. What? Waiting for the perfect time? The perfect time rarely ever arrives. Life tends to move, in seasons for all of us. The kids grow up. Friends, they relocate. Health changes. Energy changes. Circumstances change. One retiree put it to me this way. We kept saying someday until someday got a lot more complicated. The retirees who seem most content often found ways to create memories while they still had the ability to enjoy them, not recklessly, not irresponsibly, but intentionally. Look, this final regret may be the most emotional. Many retirees discover they spent years protecting the money that they ultimately wanted to use for family anyway. Now look, don't misunderstand me. This doesn't mean writing huge, giant checks. It doesn't mean sacrificing your own retirement. And if money has never been the thing that you had much of to give, look, that's not the point here either. Presence doesn't require a checkbook. Time is the gift that can scale to whatever you actually have. It means recognizing something important. Sometimes support is more valuable when people need it, not 20 years later. A grandparent helping with education, helping with childcare, sharing wisdom, providing encouragement, maybe creating some great experiences, being present. One grandmother told me, my grandkids won't remember what was in my will. They'll remember that I showed up. To be honest with you, that just gets me. That's my hope for my grandchildren, that they remember that their grandpa showed up. Many retirees eventually realized their greatest legacy, it wasn't an inheritance. It was involvement, the conversations, the relationships, the examples, the memories, the time. Money matters. Look, I get that. But memories compound too. Now, before we get to the last chapter, here's something worth sitting with. Nobody regrets taking care of their health. Nobody regrets building friendships. Nobody regrets spending time with their grandchildren. Nobody regrets creating memories. Nobody regrets finding a purpose. Not one person. Not in the surveys, not in the comments, not in any conversation that I've had thinking about this video. The regret never comes from doing those things. It comes from postponing them, from assuming there'd be more time to start later. Every regret we've covered today is a version of the exact same mistake. Not the thing itself, the delay. We look across all 6 regrets. What do you see? A pattern appears. Very few retirees say, I wish I had accumulated another $20,000. Instead, they say, I wish I had spent more time with people I love. I wish I had taken better care of my health. I wish I had worried less. I wish I had started sooner. I wish I had been more present. Remember what I said? These weren't really 6 regrets. Here they are side by side. Retiring too early, retiring too late, losing community, ignoring your health, delaying experiences, not spending enough time with family. They all come back to just one thing, assuming there would be more time. That's it. That's the regret. Wearing 6 different outfits. Take the time to build a plan. Get pen and paper. Get an Excel sheet. If you want help building a plan that accounts for more than just the dollars, one that actually makes room for time and health and relationships, not just a number in an account. Look, we built the retirement reality check. It'll help you go through a plan if you can use that help. Look, drop your email over at brainflash.com. It comes right to your inbox. Look, retirement isn't a math problem. It's a time problem. Money matters because it buys options. But eventually, every retiree discovers the same thing. The asset that mattered most, it was never the portfolio. It was the years. And unlike money, years cannot be replenished. They can only be spent. The question is whether you're spending them on the things you'll be glad you chose 5 years from now. This is Brain Flash.